What's going on with your folks out there?
Hey. How y'all doing?
We
What?
are here live. We here live.
Yes,
This
it
is
is
nothing but
Uncle
the
B
uncles.
and Fee.
Yes, indeed.
That's right. Yep, we're coming to you live every Tuesday from 8 to 9 Eastern Standard Time. Now, on this podcast, we break down the ins and outs of relationships. You know, we talk about the things that your parents didn't teach you, or maybe they
Uh-huh.
did. But,
Mhm.
dating in the 21st century is a little bit different than the way that they did it. So, we think it's
Woo!
important to kind of explore things together, see if we can all find some common ground. Oop, I'm being real shaky right now on my camera. But yeah, it's important for us to kind of find some common ground just because we're in a different sort of situation than they were. So,
Mhm.
we want to get right into it. But first, we need you to like this video. We
Like
need
it,
you to subscribe to our channel,
subscribe,
and
and
we want you to do something else. Get ready for this podcast. Hey, we're going to be talking about communication.
yes,
Communication is
indeed.
very, very important, especially communication between men and women. That is a huge, it is probably one of the biggest aspects of relationships that I don't think that people even really take into consideration. Everyone's always talking about things like what they like about the person.
Hmm.
Oh, this person, I like that he has this car, or I like that she has a nice butt, or, they graduated from this school. But communication is the thing that's going to keep us together.
Yep.
So
Yep.
we got to talk about it today. What you
Uh,
think, Uncle B?
oh yeah. I mean, that's the whole thing of when you talk about a relationship, is how you relate to a person, and basically, outside of the things that you just named, when it comes
Hmm.
down to it, at the end of the day, 30, 40, 50 years, if you're with the same person all that time, it's like, well, the only thing that's going to stay
Hmm.
the same is whether or not you're talking.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And, you
Cars gonna
know,
come, kids gonna come and go, everything is gonna come and go. If you can't get that communications part straight, woo, feel sorry for you.
I
Sorry for
actually
you.
heard from I know my mom. I think I might have said this on another show, but
Mm,
it's worth saying again. I was telling my mom what these people had told me one time about how when people come together, when a man and woman comes together, if their communication is solid
mhm,
prior to having kids, it will bring them together closer. But if
mhm.
their communication is not solid before the kids, they would just it'll rip them apart. And we see the evidence of that around us, right?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, how many people that as soon as they have the child, done. It's a done deal.
yeah, yeah. Or even worse, they use the child as a way to keep the communications going all the way until the child leaves the house, and then it's like,
Right.
oh, college time, divorce
Right.
time. Like, what just happened? So
Yeah,
yeah.
crazy. Now I know you guys have probably heard of the book. I always mix this up. Men are from Mars and women are from Venus.
Yep. Hmm.
Sometimes I'm saying men from Venus, women from Mars. No, men are from Mars, women are from Venus. We want to break down today, like some of the different things. Yes, he has
Actually.
his he has his copy. Why don't you tell us where you got that too? Tell us the story. How did you get that copy anyway?
This was a surprise gift from a nice young lady who I was talking to her, and I was like, "Hey, if you're going to have a good relationship, what you should do is get a book like Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. Read the
Hmm.
book together, and then you can figure, and then talk about it.
Right.
Have your discussion, and everything like that. So you're on the same page in the same book. And this is like the book I referenced, and she actually surprised me with the book. I was like, "Hey, so."
Okay. See, and that shows you that she's
Listening.
serious. Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. She's listening and she's serious because that is the foundation of everything. I actually have a story that I wanted to share. It's not a
Oh,
personal story per se, but I
mhm,
kind of wanted to share the story to kind of kick off the show what I mean about how communication between men and women can be so vastly different. So
mhm,
I was watching this show. It comes on Lifetime. It's called Married at First Sight, which is a reality show about these experts bring couples together. They bring men and women together that they think will be a good match for one another based on whatever their specs are. So there was a woman and a man that had come together as a couple, and there was a really interesting story that sort of underlies everything that men seem to go through with women. So the woman who was the bride and the man who was the groom.
Mm-hmm.
So after they got married, they're now in the process of getting to know one another. So they get matched immediately, and then they have to get to know each other after the wedding. So the woman, she's at the man's house, and she spent the night at his house, and so she asked the man like if he had any coffee. He says, "Yeah, I have coffee." She's like, "You have sugar?" He says, "Yes, I have sugar." So she says, "Okay, cool." Then he looks in the cabinet and says, "Oh no, he got the coffee out for her. She made the coffee. Then she wants the sugar, but she didn't want to just go in the cabinet and get it herself. So she asked him if he could get her the sugar. He looks in the cabinet and he's like, "Oh, I don't have any sugar. Sorry about that." She's like, "Well, why did you tell me you had it?" And he's like, I don't know. I'm sorry." And she's like, "Let me see." She goes to the cabinet or pantry. She sees sugar. She's like, "Well, why did you just tell me that you didn't have any sugar?" He's like, "Oh, I guess there it is. I don't know. I guess I just didn't see it." She was like, "But it was right here. So why did you, like, how did you not see it?" He's like, "I don't know. I don't know. It just is what it is. Like, but at least you have it. So good.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, "Yeah, but you told me that you had it. And then you looked in there and said, and didn't see it for whatever reason. And then you turned around and later said that you didn't have it." So she's like, "But I go in there and I find it. So what's up with that?" So let me just break this down because he got really frustrated with her. She got really frustrated with him.
Mm-hmm.
So let me break down what happened. What had happened. Wait, first of all, actually, let me ask you, Brian,
Okay.
what is your opinion about that before I even break down the woman's perspective in that? Because I actually understood her, even though I thought she was doing the most.
Um, I think that um, I don't want to use crazy, but I
Man, you
mean it's just.
better come on out with it now. Say what you feel.
No, I mean seriously, it's I don't know, it's going into I don't know a relationship or a
Hmm.
conversation with the wrong intentions, bad intentions. When I
Hmm.
say bad intentions, but it's like if you're suspecting that somebody's just doing something against you
Hmm.
before there's any evidence of it, then you're going in expecting that something's going to happen. So if she's walking in like, yeah, like going in with the thought process like men lie,
Hmm.
and so you're constantly looking out for, in the back of your brain is like, oh, when's he gonna lie, when's he gonna lie, when's he gonna lie, and then something comes up, maybe innocent, and your brain's going, oh, it's lying. So I mean, because I can't imagine, you know, let's say it was one of her homegirls, or just somebody who's just neutral, that she would
Hmm.
suspect, like, oh, you have the great sugar conspiracy against me. It's like, what's going on? That doesn't make any sense to me.
So, as a man, if you were in his shoes, would you automatically kind of think that she's making a big deal about this because she's kind of referencing or projecting onto him or onto you if you were him something that happened in the past, like you're lying and she automatically came up with a story or something? I mean, like,
Yeah, I mean, in the moment, it was just it would be just confusion because I'm like, I don't get it, because I'd
like
be
why
trying
does
to.
this keep going?
Yeah, it's like I was trying to figure out, like, why would you? It's just sugar. It's like what's going on? Just I don't know how to why it would get any bigger than what it is. I thought I saw it. I
Hmm.
thought it was there. I went in there, didn't see it. Yeah, okay, keep
Big,
it
no
moving.
big deal, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. And that's exactly how men think. Everything is very simple, straight to the point. It's just this, it is what it is. I guess I just missed seeing it. I don't know. It's not a big deal. Whatever. At least you got it now. Let's move on.
Mm-hmm.
And technically that would be a much easier way to live life. But because I actually understood her perspective, let me break this down.
Okay.
This might save a lot of men's lives because I know a lot of guys go through this, and I've actually had to help other guys kind of see what was happening when something like this, occurred or happened to them.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, what she's doing is she's trying to find out, she's trying to make sense of why he said what he said. Because, okay, in our minds, if sugar is right here and I open up the cabinet and I see sugar right here in my face, that means you could have easily done the same thing. So the fact that you didn't see it for whatever reason as easily as, and I saw it very easily, it's sort of, I don't want to say that it really doesn't even deserve the term red flag, but I'm just going to give it that term for this conversation's sake. It sort of puts up a red flag in a woman's mind that there's something deeper to this, either denial or that it's not necessarily even denial. I know that's a little extra, but it's almost like well, why? Like, what is going on with him that is causing him to not be able to see what I'm able to see, which is the sugar. And because here's the thing too. Another part of that story is that there was another incident on the show that happened where the guy said something. I'm just going to make up an example just to give you the example of something that happened. So, like, let's say they went to the beach, because they did actually go to the beach in real life. But let's say the guy said, I don't really care for beaches. But then when she came to his house, he suggested going to the beach. Then she would have asked him something like, well, why would you suggest going to the beach if you don't like it? Well, because I thought maybe you might like it. Yeah, but we can do something that you like and that I like, that we both equally like. Well, I don't know. I just thought maybe we'd just go to the beach. Even though this doesn't really deserve a whole lot, the reason why women do find fault sometimes in things that are small and they are seemingly microscopic is because we're trying to make sense of things. Like, all men know that women are natural detectives. We're always able to snoop out stuff. We use our intuition to figure things out. And so when a woman is trying to make something make sense, then if the story doesn't flow right, if it's like, well, this reason shouldn't equal that reason, or this shouldn't be the cause or the effect of that, then it's like it triggers something in our mind and makes us wonder, is this guy hiding something, or is there a reason behind why he's doing or saying what he's saying? Now, that's a lot of women, but it's,
well, I mean, to me, it still goes back to the same thing. It's like, if you think that that's a possibility ahead of time, that he's going to be doing something sneaky or suspicious, then your brain is just going to default to that. So it's like the example of, you hear that aliens steal. I'm not talking about illegal immigrants or anything. I'm talking about actual aliens. Aliens steal. So you're in a room and you leave out of the room to do something. You come back into the room and your book is gone. Your book bag is gone. And the first thing you're thinking is the aliens took it. It's like you're already predisposed. So if you're coming in prejudging something, it's like the questions that you're going to ask are going to be questions that question that person. So you're right. If you want to, natural detectives, that's fine. But if this natural detectives because I already suspected you the culprit, then that's when you start running into issues. And I think that goes into sort of the crux of it. Is like in communications, it's like if you're communicating with somebody and you're constantly looking for something. I mean, I actually met a lady a while ago, and she said, when she gets married, when she knows that men cheat, so she knows her husband's going to cheat. And I told her, I hope you never get married, because you're just going to break some dude's heart. He's going to come into it like, oh yeah, I got a wife and everything's cool. And then the next thing you know, it's like natural detective kicks in. Oh, you were home late from work. Oh, why were you looking at this? Why did this person call? Why did this, that dude from Allstate, that middle of the night dude is calling, talking to
Jake from State Farm.
State Farm, yeah. And like, she just comes out.
What are you wearing, Jake?
He sounds ugly. It's like, yeah, that's not, to me, that's not communications. That's detective work. And it's like, and it's awful to the person because I've experienced that. I was in a relationship where that's all she did. It was like, um, a person to come into the room and be a, a woman comes into the room, and I look at her, and she's like, "Oh, well, you like her, don't you? You like looking at it." It's like, hold up, it's another human just walked into the room. I'm not supposed to look at
Yeah.
another human. It can take it too far. So it's like communications. It's like you got your different love signs. And it's really about being on the same page. And if you are suspecting that the person is not going to treat you well, then you're never going to be on the same page.
Well,
It's
I think that that's like really unhealthy. Like there are, and let me clarify that there are two different types of people. There's probably more than that, but I'm just saying that for the sake of conversation. There is the mature version and the immature version. Like to me, immature communication is when a person either doesn't like speak clearly or try to explain themselves at all. Sometimes people under communicate because they feel like I shouldn't have to, she should know, or he should know. To me,
Ooh.
that's one immature way of communicating. And the other is the over communication, where I guess, in a sense, I'm saying over communication, but it's kind of like what you're talking about, where the woman is communicating about what she thinks and her suspicions, but she's not really giving the man a chance to explain and actually pay attention to his response. And men can actually do the same thing. And
Wait.
I've been in those shoes myself,
Mhm.
where a guy has accused me. I've had multiple times where guys have accused me of stuff, and I'm like, we're not even dating. Like, how are you even? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like, because
Right.
if you're just hanging out and your feelings change, but mine haven't, and you're making an assumption that because your feelings change, mine are supposed to change
Mhm.
with yours. So now all of a sudden the things that I do are supposed to be in alignment with your new feelings.
Mhm.
It's like you haven't communicated that to me. So I do think that we have to also distinguish between the immature and the mature version.
Well, it's the first thing that you talked about. That's a pet peeve of mine. I just hate that one. That one where it's like, you should know what I'm thinking, type
Hmm.
of deal. And guys go. I mean, maybe women go through this too, but I know this is a known thing for guys where it's like, it's like, hey, baby, how you doing? Fine. Oh, you sure? You okay? Yes, I'm fine. And you like, obviously, you're not fine. You now have this voice attitude. I can tell.
Hmm.
I've been around you. What's going on? She doesn't want to tell you. And then later on, it's like, you should know. That's why
Well,
I'm
I
asking.
don't.
No, I don't.
Yeah.
And it's like and it's a weird concept. And I actually came up with a little theory behind this because it's a thing of like, you should know what I'm thinking. And you can't apply that to anyone else. You don't go to your boss at the job and like, I want a
Yeah.
raise. You don't know that? I mean, that doesn't you don't go
Actually,
to the
people do think that.
well,
But I know what you mean, though.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
They do
You
think that. They be like, "This mofo know that. He know what I'm doing for this company. I'm getting out of here."
Yeah, I mean, it's like, nah, that's not the way that that's not the way that any of this stuff works. And and also the let's like going to your doctor and saying, hey, you should know how the pain that I'm feeling. You don't do this anywhere else. But years ago, yeah, just a few years ago, a friend of mine came over with her daughter, and her daughter was playing with her Barbies, and it was like Ken and Barbie, and she was saying, well, okay, well, we have to be on a date for 6 months before anything happens, and blah blah blah. And it's like, it wasn't what she was saying, it was the fact that she was having a conversation between the man and the woman without of course the benefit of the man being in the conversation at all, or the boy being in the conversation. And so it to
How
me it
old was
seems,
she? I'm just curious.
oh, 6, maybe
6.
5, 6, something like that.
Wow. Okay.
um so it's like, to that point of if you're in your mind having these conversations, this is the way it's supposed to work out. Years later, it could seep in that, oh, well, he's supposed to know what I'm thinking. and he's supposed to think like this because I think like this. And so you're developing something in your own mind without other people guiding your relationship, or even talking to another male to see what his perspective is. So you end up, to me, it seems like I've seen this enough times where I'm thinking that some women just think that the guy's just supposed to know what you're thinking. It's like, no, we think differently. And also the thing like men and women are equal also lends itself to people thinking that we think the same. And it's like, no, of course we don't think the thing. We're not supposed to think the same. I mean,
You know what that is?
what
A
was that?
lot of times what that is I think it's the same issue like with men sometimes, where a man certain men that have a really hard time with women and they hate women as a result is
Mm,
because they communicate to women the way they would communicate to another
yeah,
man, and
yeah.
they think that the woman is supposed to just jump on board. And it's the same thing with women. Some women communicate to men the same way that they communicate to their girlfriends, and that can cause problems because then they're trying to figure out, like I was talking to my girl about this, and now all of a sudden I'm not
Mm,
getting the same type of response from you. So
yeah.
she takes it as disinterest from the specific man,
Hmm.
whereas it could just be a matter of no, men just don't like a woman who wants to talk. Like, and I know women like this. Like women, I mean, I know I got guy friends and I talk to them about different things, but I also know certain subject matter to not really go in depth with a guy. Like things like talking about handbags, purses, shoes. Well, first of all, I don't really care about that anyway. But even if I did care, that
Hmm.
would be conversation I would reserve for my girlfriends. If I wanted to talk about the latest makeup trends, I would reserve that for a female. And I think sometimes women make the mistake of trying to dump too much of all of that extra, like they're oversharing all this womanly stuff,
Hmm.
with a man, and his mind is like, it's like he's trying to sift through it, like, well, what things should I retain? What things should I throw away? But then you're trying to listen just enough so you can have a key word. So she says, you know what I mean? And then, like, if the last word you heard was apple juice, you'd be like, yeah, there's something, the apple juice, boy, that's something. You don't
Yeah.
even know what the hell she said about apple juice, but
Oh yeah.
I
Oh
think
yeah.
that's kind of the issue when you're dealing with women, um, like that.
And it's that even in the book Men from Mars, Women from Venus that I read this years ago, he talks about how men should talk to women. Um, and it goes into something else that TD Jake says. So I'm gonna try to blend these together. But basically, it's like women. Well, first of all, women use on average 20,000 words a day. Men on average use 7,000. So women are talking more. And so there's this whole thing of like expressing and wanting to be heard and feelings involved and things like that. And for guys, it's like 33, 34 hut. We don't waste time with a whole bunch of words. And so if you're in the book, he talks about, for guys, it's like when a woman is talking, the key to understand is that she's not asking you to do something. So we by nature want to create. It's like there's a problem, we're supposed to fix it. That's what we're hearing. You have a problem, I'm supposed to fix it. That's the way this works. So a woman coming in saying, oh well, I was at work today and she blah 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 blah,
Just wanting to be heard.
yeah, just want to be heard. But in the meantime, the guy's sitting there like, oh, well, that means that you need for me to work harder so you don't have to have this job anymore. So blah, blah, blah. So the guy just sitting there coming up with like, okay, I'm supposed to do this. And what he'll do is interject and say, hey, well, why don't you do this? Or why don't you talk to the person like this? Or why don't you do this? And she's like, oh, no, no, blah, 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 blah. And he's like, how do I get her to stop talking? I'm going to give her a solution so she can stop talking. And so and she wants to be heard, he wants to get the solution. If you don't understand that dynamic, then you're going to mess up. And what he says, John Gray, PhD, the guy that wrote Men from Mars, Women from Venus, he says, for guys, while she's talking, look at her right here between her eyes and just go along with it. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We will get lost. We will get lost in the trail of like, oh yeah. And the other day she wore this sweater, this cardigan. I don't know why she was wearing that cardigan because she know I have a cardigan that
Yeah.
same color. Blah blah blah. And you're
And
like,
sometimes we don't even there is no point to the story. Y'all always looking for what's the finale. There ain't
33,
always a
34 hot.
finale.
What play are we running? Why are we talking about this? And so, yeah, if you're looking at right here, because if you look her in the eyes, you're going to get completely lost. Like, huh? So look her right here and just go, okay, yep, you were so right.
I
Uh,
do think though, I feel like even though I feel like on one hand that's good advice, especially for I think it's good advice for people who are meeting each other. But I think
mm,
that ultimately you can't keep up a facade. If you are really if you're like let's say a
yeah,
man is dealing with a chatty woman, just as an example, and he can't stand it. I
hmm
don't think you can sustain. You can't do that forever.
well, that's
I
true.
think that a guy has to be honest to some degree.
Well, I mean, you can be honest, but honestly, it's like, well, I can't deal with you talking like this. I mean, the issue is like, and shout out to Vance. He says, "Man, are you in my house?" Yeah, well, you understand. But yeah, it's like,
What's up, Vance?
mhm, it's it's that whole thing of if you what's supposed to happen is that we're supposed to live in communities. We're supposed to be, it's not supposed to be a man and a woman in a giant house by themselves for years and stuff like that. It's supposed to be like, we're out and about constantly working with our neighbors, our community, blah, 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 so that the women can get together and can go use them 20,000 words, kill it. And the men can go use our 5,000 words and just be happy. And so, we both expend our male and female energy and then we can come back together and be cool. But if you're, and I've experienced this because I was with a chatty woman who didn't have any friends. So she was thinking that I was her friend. And I'm like, nah, I'm your boyfriend. That means no, I don't want to go shopping. No, I don't want to go
All the
see this.
girly things.
Yeah, this is that's female things. It's like, well, yeah, you get within a year, you get 3 or 4 of those. Get one a quarter of like, I'll just go shopping with you and just, hey, look, that is that color is different. It's the same damn color. So the same thing for her. She may hate
Or maybe
football.
you could just sit there like this
Yeah.
and you just holding the purse.
Yeah, and that's what ends up happening for the guy who went on by the third. He went on the third 3 times in 1 quarter. That third trip is like torturous. It's like, oh god, yeah. So it's like, that's the part that people need to realize. It's like, one, there's people talk about the love languages and stuff. You have to understand the love languages of how people need to receive the information you're giving, and two, recognize that you need to have, it can't be just you two. It needs to be friends involved with the that situation. Otherwise, you're just going to tire each other out, because she's going to get tired because he's not responding the way that she does. And
But I do think that it's still, I mean, it's still in a man's best interest to try and work harder. I mean, they both have to make some type of modification. No, you have to make some type of you compromise with that because, and here's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about being her girlfriend. That's not
Mhm,
what I mean by compromise. What I'm talking about specifically is, like you said, men are like 1, 2, 3 hut. Then y'all just said a full paragraph. Like matter of fact, that was a whole conversation. One, two,
mhm,
three, hut. Okay, cool. And y'all just that was it. That doesn't work for us. So
mhm,
in a situation where you're going to be working together in a household and you have to bring your powers together in a household so that it's running smoothly, it is
mhm,
in a man's best interest to try to learn how to communicate in a way that is at least clear and that is succinct and that is linear. And what I mean by that is like I actually I have a couple of people a couple of guys I know that are like this where when they're communicating it is just like pulling teeth trying to understand what they're saying. And
mhm,
one thing I notice with guys sometimes when I say that is a guy sometimes will say something but they will leave out the most pertinent information that will help us as women to understand what they're communicating. So like let's just say for example, I'm gonna give you an example that happened today. This happened today at work. What you gonna say about that?
mhm.
I
Say again.
said I said I'm gonna give you an example about what happened at work.
That you don't have no job, Tommy. I mean, I ain't want everybody to know that you pretend like you have a job, but okay. Internet world, she ain't got no job.
Anyway, so so like, okay, I'm at work. I'm
Mm-hmm.
talking to my coworker.
Mm-hmm.
It's a technology. I work in the technology field. Let's put it like that. So a lot of the guys, they are very black and white, very direct. Like everything, all the communication is very minimal, which is very odd for me. Somebody coming from a background that's more so like an operational and media and stuff like that. Like to be in a tech environment is just, the men's thinking is so different. And so I was asking my coworker a question, and it was actually okay. I was asking him a question about an Excel spreadsheet. I asked him about doing some kind of project, and instead of him giving me the steps to be able to complete the project from A to Z, and not leaving out any letters, he left out a lot of letters in between. So I was sitting there trying to piece together and trying to figure out what the alphabet looked like. You get what I'm saying? So it's kind of like it's like a child in kindergarten. They're learning their ABCs. They have to first learn their ABCs before you can ask them to spell a word. You can't go up to a kid who doesn't even know their ABCs and say spell the word cat, right? But so I think sometimes when guys communicate to one another or even to women, they don't fill in the gaps because you guys are used to just kind of filling in your own gaps. And then
Right.
that will leave us as women puzzled because we want all the information that we need so that we can understand and make the best decision possible if there's a decision to be made, or just so that we can understand and not fill in the gaps with our own information. Because as it pertains to relationships, if a woman is left hanging and the gaps are not filled by the man, she's going to come up with the worst story in the world. She's going to fill those gaps. So if a woman is, let's say a guy says, I'm going to be home at 4 o'clock this evening, and he gets home at 5, and she says, oh, where'd you go? Now, if he's smart, he's going to say, he's going to kind of give her a storyline. I'm not saying lie. I'm just saying the way he's going to communicate to her is
Mm-hmm.
in a way that he is basically starting from what happened at 4 and what took place to end up making it to where now he's not getting home until 5. Maybe he got stuck in traffic. And then after he got stuck in traffic, he decided to stop at the liquor store and get some Jim Beam, but they ran out. And then all of a sudden he was standing at the counter waiting. I don't know. I'm just making up anything, but I'm just saying that is something that a woman can understand and relate to. Like, okay, yeah, I get it. Like standing in line takes this much time. Then maybe he stopped at the gas station since the gas station was next door to the liquor store. And it's not that you would have to do this every time, but if it's a situation that you know could escalate quickly, like why weren't you home? That can turn into a 3-day fight fest.
Oh,
Why
no
not
doubt.
end it? I'm just saying, I know
Mm-hmm.
a lot of guys go through this. If instead of having a 3-day fight fest that you're hoping will end, and trust me, I don't know why men be always hoping with women, because women can hang on to stuff for a long time. Now I'm a little different because I don't like all that. I don't like being unpleasant. I don't like having unhappy feelings. I hate all that shit. Like I
Mm-hmm.
like to just air everything out. I just come out straight up, boom. As soon as the problem hits, I'm there. But a lot of people don't do that. And a lot of times what women will do is when a man is telling them something and they think that the man is lying, they will sit there and marinate on it. Now, if they're asking a man questions and he doesn't give her satisfactory responses, and then he gets sick of the fact that, she keeps questioning him and then he leaves the house, well, now you have opened up yourself to a whole lot of bad things to come, because now she's going to be thinking about what you did, and
Mm-hmm.
she's going to fill it in. You're not going to be at Bible study. You didn't almost get ran over by a car. None of those things have happened. What you were doing is you was down the street with some chick, or
Mm-hmm.
you was in the storage room with some chick. Basically, there was a chick involved, and
But
then she's going to get on the phone with her girls.
well, see, to me, once again, that goes back to if you're going into something suspecting. I mean, because guys will do this too. If you
Mhm.
if now, okay, now I think that you're a cheater, because we don't go through life hearing that men and women cheat at an equal rate. This whole thing that men cheat was always stupid to me. It was like, unless we're talking about a different conversation, they're cheating with women. So men and women cheat. So women have been hearing constantly that men cheat, so it's always this suspect thing. So it's like I've lived that. I actually when I was actually mugged, like I got mugged, gun, all of that stuff, and I get back. And she's upset with me because it took me a long time to get back. What are you doing? So I'm getting yelled at after being mugged. So I'm already on edge, but here it is. She's suspecting that something was. I'm like,
Did
I'm
you
out
walk
for.
in the door and
Yeah,
immediately say anything?
yeah. I mean, she was like, "Oh, what are you doing? Why are you taking so long? Blah blah blah. What are you doing?" I mean, it was just coming at me. Now I'm already in shock. So I got this other person who supposed to be my peace, supposed to be my comfort, is coming at me again. So that is you know that's the things that you're talking about. It always seems to be like, okay, once again, like you said, she's not thinking you're at choir rehearsal, she's thinking that's something else. It's like, well, you can't escape that part. If you're and it's like you and I've lived that relationship where you have to explain yourself all the time. uh
Everybody ain't gonna be perfect though. Some women are just gonna be stuck on that, and if
but
that is a
and
problem,
here's the
that's a
thing,
red
that
flag.
relationship's going to end. Is going to end if you're
Yeah,
if
that's
you
and that should.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's in a, I think, but the issue to me is like, what you're saying is that men need to, I get it. Okay, be better explainers. That's cool. But I will say this because, for most people will say that I'm a pretty good communicator. Uh, but if you keep coming at me with like, oh, I think you're cheating all the time, or I have these suspicions, blah, 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 it's like, well, I'm going to stop because
I
it's
no. Let me explain. There is a
Mhm.
distinction to be made there. I
Okay.
don't mean be a better explainer because you're trying to crawl out of a hole. If you're
Mhm.
constantly having to crawl out of a hole, I don't even have that type of patience.
Mhm.
This has happened to me before with, like I said, guys that I wasn't even dating. And normally I shut off immediately because I'm like, I ain't got time for it. You got a couple more chances, maybe. And I'm not going to tell him that. But
Mhm.
in my mind, I'm thinking that because I see that this is something going on with you. It has nothing to do with me. And if that is something going on with a woman, that's a problem that you will never be able to explain your way out of or ever correct. So there is a distinction to be made between what I'm saying about a woman who explains, I mean, about a man learning to explain himself a little bit better, just in general, because you don't want a woman who actually, I would say, believes you, but I don't mean that like, oh, she just believes anything you say, like you could just talk, you could say something crazy to her. But a woman who's not looking at you as anything, she's taking you at your word, and as long as it makes sense, she just lets it go. You don't want that woman, you don't want to turn that woman into a non-believer, is really what I'm saying. And I've seen that happen before with, different friends of mine where they were talking to a guy, and I know this because when they were telling me the stories, they're like, oh yeah, he said this, that, and the other. And I'd be like, that doesn't make sense. And then they like, yeah, I know, I didn't think it made sense, but whatever. And they let it go, but then they let the next thing go and the next thing go. And it's like, it's not too many times you can really let something go. Even if they try to bring something up to the guy and he's all like, kind of dismissive, at some point,
Mhm.
you may turn a woman who actually gave you a chance into a non-believer. So that's really what I'm saying. That
Yeah, I
woman,
mean,
not
yeah,
not the other one, not the one that's like, you was out there.
yeah,
It don't matter who, you could be Jesus and you was cheating.
yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, but I think you know, there's different levels to the communication, different times that your communications have to be clear. So, I always talk about the 5 L's in relationships. The like, love, and lust. That's how you get to the coupling. And
Mm-hmm.
then there's your life. Uh, when you have the combined life of two different people, that's let's say two people meet at the age of 25. That's 50. That's 50 years of them not being together. And so now they have two different lives. How do you pass lives? How do you put that together to figure out whether
Yeah.
or not you can live together? And people talk about marriage. It's like, before you talk about marriage, let's talk about you living together, not living together in sin or something like that. I'm just talking about the fact that in order for you to have a successful relationship over the course of 60 years, hopefully, you're going
Right.
to have to be able to live together. And so, the communications on that side needs to be established up front, in terms of like how you can live. And if you can't communicate with each other on that part, then you need to just go ahead and just recognize that. At the very least, you can start delineating. If a person is like, well, my lifestyle is like this. I'm very active. I like being out. Taking a hike, blah blah blah. Another person is like, well, I like playing video games in the dark till 3 a.m. and then getting up in the morning and eating some Cocoa Puffs, and that's my day. You know,
I haven't had Cocoa Puffs in forever.
yeah, I had some Cocoa Puffs recently. But anyway,
You probably had it right before this podcast started.
Yeah.
Keep it real. Hey, listen, speaking of keeping it real, that's actually what I was going to say. What you're talking about actually involves some realism here. Some people don't like to admit things that seem embarrassing. Of course, eating Cocoa Puffs is not embarrassing, but there are things that the habits that people have, and I think that they keep that stuff hidden, and that can actually pose a problem with communication too. Because if you're selling a person on, being a certain way or a certain kind of individual, and then all of a sudden you get comfortable and then you become this totally different person, well, then they're going to be like, oh, you know what? This actually brings me to, what's that lady's name? There's a neuroscientist named Mel Robbins, I believe. I've seen quite a few of her videos on YouTube. She does a lot of videos. Really, it's all kind of stuff about like just how to change your life, and but from a neuroscience standpoint, which I love because I love combining the spiritual with the scientific. But anyway, she had a very interesting concept. She said a lot of reasons, a lot of times, the reason why relationships don't work with people is because, like how you're saying, two people coming from separate lives, right? So, two people coming from their separate lives, when they come together, like when two people start dating for the first time, they are consciously dating, meaning, like, if you start dating a woman, you're conscious about the woman that you're dating, meaning that you're all in it. You're paying attention to her likes, her dislikes. You're paying attention to her habits. You're just paying attention to everything about her.
Right.
How she wears her hair, all of that. She's doing the same thing. Right. And she's doing the same thing with you. She's like, okay, let me see, what is he like? Let me see what he's about. Let me see this, that, and the other. Okay. Well, what Mel was explaining is that at some point during the relationship, once you guys are comfortable, she said what happens that actually causes the conflict, which no one ever really seems to explain, is just the honeymoon is over. It's not that the honeymoon is over per se, like all of a sudden people get mean, but when we go into our comfortable self, we actually go into, like, subconsciously, we go into the person who we are when we're by ourselves. The person that, so for instance, if you were raised in a household where, let's say, there was a lot of screaming and a lot of yelling, and let's say that that's kind of been part of your genetic makeup. While you were in the house, you learned to start screaming and yelling. When you're out with your friends, you scream and yell. You do all the screaming and yelling all the time. But then all of a sudden you meet a woman and she seems like a fragile petal rose. And so you're like, okay, well, let me dial it back because I don't want to scare her off. Well,
Right.
you're basically telling her, I don't want to scare you off yet. Because if that woman is the type of woman that would get scared off by that, then eventually she's going to leave. And then what happens is the guy will act like it was her fault, that, like, well, you changed, why all of a sudden you don't like me? But he's not realizing that he eventually, once he got comfortable with her, he eventually turned into his subconscious self, meaning he eventually went into what he's comfortable being. And one thing that Mel was also explaining is that a lot of times who we subconsciously are our parents. So we may consciously say, I don't want to be like my parent. I mean, some people consciously want to be like their parents, some people don't. But a lot of times people say that there may be certain aspects of their parents they don't want to be like, or whoever was their legal guardian. But subconsciously, once they're comfortable with someone, they start to do the same exact things. They have the same habits as them. So it's like this. you were a person and she's a person coming together, but now y'all are like subconsciously two different people. So it's
Mm,
almost like two different people getting together unless you're comfortable enough to be who you are from the gate.
yeah, 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 yeah.
That's real. Like I when I heard her explain that, I was like, if everybody just came in, just this is me.
Well, I think that that part is actually sort of difficult because that changes through phases. So I've been in a relationship where it was, when you're boyfriend girlfriend, you're one way. When you're engaged and you're looking to get married and everything, you start functioning differently because people have their own list of, and this uh, tends to be more women that the whole list thing. It's like you're supposed to, man, supposed to, you're supposed to, you're supposed to, you're supposed to, you're supposed to, and she had her list of I was supposed tos, and eventually I was asking, which one?
Where does that list come from though? Where do you think that list comes from?
Oh yeah, from her parents, from her background, everything like that. But at the same time, it was like while that was happening, I was turning into my father because it was becoming way more uh responsible, if you will. So it was like it went from like, oh yeah, freewheeling, blah blah blah, to like, oh, this is going to happen, this is going to happen, this is going to happen, well, we need to plan this out. Where's the money coming from, blah 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 blah. I was becoming a more responsible person, but that's not what I presented up front. And that was because while we're dating, well, it didn't matter because I wasn't thinking about our future. I was thinking about smashing or whatever I was thinking about.
Yeah. He
But
was like, "Ooh, I can't wait to hit them skins."
and then after that part, it was like, oh yeah. So there's uh, and like I always say, there's no classes for relationships and stuff like that growing up. So people just start making stuff up, like from that homegirl 5 years old with the Barbie doll, you just making stuff up. And so that whole, like I said, that love and life part is like, yeah, you have to. It is trying to figure out your life, and I actually never thought about the parents aspect of it, and that's the reason why uh, go ahead and get your books. Study your books. I can get that screen. Study your books, so that you can
Yeah.
figure some of the stuff out because it's even your communication is going to change. And I say this to a lot of women don't get this part about for men. We will if you're you know type of person or type of relationship where the stress level is sort of here, and it's like as guys get older, our testosterone starts going down and our ability to deal with stress starts going down. And so you end up with guys who are just like, the woman's like more or less the same throughout in terms of like, just whatever the stress level is for whatever
The
reason.
rah rah.
Yeah. And it was like, he just hits a point where it's like, I'm gone. I mean, I've seen this happen on divorce courts and all these different shows. I saw it happen on Oprah where the guy was just like, you know, you could see the level of stress because it was not only the wife, but the two daughters who were there. There were adult daughters who were just going in on him like like this was normal. And he was just like, ain't no way you want to talk me into anything, And I tell women that's the reason why guys will get to a certain age and you still with the rah rah, and they're just like, I'm gone. I will pay my way out. I will. I will. You can have the house, you can have the puppy, you can have whatever. I'm just.
I do notice that guys usually they're ready to just let everything go. I guess
Mhm.
all for the sake of peace.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's like, there was a poll that was done on a Facebook group, and it was like, men, couple, folks 40 and over, and the poll was, it showed this picture of this fine woman and everything. It was like, she's beautiful, all this other kind of stuff, but she has an attitude. Guys, would you get with her? And it was like 95% of the guys were like, no, no way, we done. And the other 5% were like, I'd hit it, then we done. And it was interesting because a lot of women were saying, nah, y'all would hit it. You stay with her, blah, blah, blah. Because they were saying that's our experience, of seeing it.
Hmm.
It's like, well, that's your experience seeing the guy dating, hanging out with her, but not staying in a relationship, not staying in a long term marriage because we can't deal with it. When I say we can't deal with it, it's like, that men die faster. And
But
it's
that actually brings up a good point because I'm just trying to figure out some. I mean, I'm always trying to figure out why do guys put themselves in these situations with women if you know it's going to be a problem. And when I say that, a lot of times they're not just doing this one time. They go back to the woman, or
Mhm.
they put themselves in a situation where it it,
It,
it, it does tend
it
to be this back and forth thing.
it'll keep going until a certain age. That's the truth of it. It's like, you think that you're young enough to deal with the stress. It's like, oh man, yeah, that whole thing of you wake up in the morning, you look at her like, oh, she's fine. She get out of the bed, bucket naked, and you're like, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I'll put up with whatever. And then like 2 days later, it's like, I got to get the hell out of here. Uh,
Hmm.
but in your mind, you go back like, I can handle it, and then you keep going back and forth. That's that. When I was
I guess
younger, I
that's
could
like
handle it.
having a job that where you make a lot of money, but you hate the job.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. You think you can deal with it for long enough, and it's like if something's going to change, but it's like, nah, the guy has changed, and it's like the difference between men and women is that women will enjoy dramas more, soap operas and things like that, and men will enjoy sports more. Whereas like, well, dramas can keep on going forever. Sports is like, well, at some point you ain't playing basketball like you did when you was 25, 18, whatever. You hit 50, and you can go out there and play that basketball game one time, like, that was fun. Ah, shit. I'll see you
Be
next.
out there with your broke kneecaps.
Exactly, exactly. So, so to the ladies, yeah, we get stressed out and we will flame out, and a friend of mine from back in the day, she was saying how she couldn't understand why her boss left his wife, two kids, and all this other kind of stuff, and he was high powered, had huge amount of money, and was just like, whatever, bye. Even Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, these guys are just like, yeah, we good, but you hit a certain point where it's like, if you're stressing us, then there's no amount of ain't
Well,
no
do
amount of
we
good.
really know what happened? Like maybe the woman is the one that really wanted that to happen and the man didn't.
I mean, yeah, it's always
I
it's
always feel like when I don't know the story, I can't be on the side of whoever, or I mean, I don't see the pattern because I don't know what actually happened, like who
mm,
led to the, since especially
but,
statistics show that women are usually the initiator.
yeah, yeah. I mean, that's a whole different conversation right there. But it's like, you know, for most guys, it's like, we want to stay married. It's like, that's we build an emotional fort. It's like, okay, this is the one I'm supposed to protect. These are the kids I'm supposed to protect. So, back in the day when I was younger, I was ready to go off to war and kill everybody on some other planet, part of the world, to protect my country. And then you hit a point where it's like, nah, it's much easier, just protect these folks right here. And then you look at what happens when a fort is abandoned. The fort starts crumbling. So that's what happens when, like, it's like the guys like won't pay attention until the woman is, I'm leaving, and then falls apart. I've seen it happen so many times. uh this one this one girl just took her kid and left, and they married, and he come home like, honey, somebody took stole all
Yeah,
the baby.
I have seen that happen. But you know what I think that that's from, because I've talked to men and women both who've been through those situations. I think what ends up happening, from what I hear, the pattern is that women are constantly communicating their disdain with the man when they get to a certain point. Women are just always oversharing that they are sick of this and asking a guy do this, do that. Guys have a tendency a lot of times to try to sift through the information and figure out, well, which thing is more important to tackle, and then the rest of the stuff, like, just whatever. But see, to women, everything is equally important. So
Right.
I think that that's the biggest difference between men and women. But wait,
It-
I no, wait, hold on, I got to just make this one point though
mhm.
about what you were saying, is that the problem with that is that then end up men end up saying, after the woman leaves, like you said, they fall apart. But then they're like, but then when you ask them, well, what happened? They don't know. They're confused. But women can tell you, they can give you a list of 1,000 reasons why it fell apart. And they can tell you exactly what happened on the day they had the conversation with the guy, what he said. I mean, they
Mhm.
got all the reasons in the world, but the man is like, I don't know. One day we were cool, and then the next day she said she's leaving me. I don't know
Mhm.
what happened. But
Yeah.
I don't think he was listening.
Well, I mean, that part right there goes on two different levels because watching Kevin Samuels and just listening to the women who are like, you know, 80% of women are the ones who are leaving the relationship, or whether it's dating or whether it's marriage, and it's like he asked them, "Why did you leave?" And it would be like, um, because it's like, okay, if it's 1,000 reasons, then hold up. How is this guy going to be able to figure out which one to fix? Because, like you said, it's 1,000 reasons. So, I do this, and I do that, and I do this, and it's like, well, no. The truth of the matter is, she was just didn't want to be with you, or um, or wasn't ready for a relationship to the point it was like, well, yeah, in her mind, that Barbie doll, that Ken doll, was supposed to be perfect. He was supposed to know and do everything, and it was like, well, no,
Yeah,
it ain't perfect.
that's
So it
true.
was like,
That's true too.
yeah. So it's like, and it's actually shocking to scary to hear women. You ask them, why did you get divorced, and they'll either, if they were divorced young, it's like, oh, I was young and dumb. It's like, exactly, what does that mean? And then, or if they're, just later on in life, and like, why did you leave the relationship? Like, it's like, hold up, you stood before God and said, hey, we're gonna make this blah 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 blah, and it's like, then you don't have it's like, please have a reason, so that at least the next guy that comes along is like, oh, okay, I know not to do that, or I know that I'm not like that, so I don't have to worry about that particular issue. But if it's blank, then it's like nobody knows what to do with that.
I
And
don't know any women who just don't have a reason.
well, I mean, I guess the question would be, how long would it take to explain 1,000 reasons why?
Well, no, you know what it is? It could be 1,000 problems, but a lot
Mhm.
of the problems could be lumped under one category. So, like, a lot of times women complain about things, and I hear this across the board. A lot of times women are complaining about their man. They feel like he's not doing enough around the house. That's just one that we can,
Mhm.
we've all heard
Yep.
at some point. If
Mhm.
a man is not doing enough around the house and she's like, "Can you please do the dishes?" And he's like, "Whatever." "Can you please vacuum?" Or "Did you see this dirt on the floor?" And he just seems to like not really care, then you can't really be surprised when all of a sudden she's serving you papers. I'm not saying that it's right or wrong. I'm just saying you should understand why things happen the way they do. If you don't want to clean up, that's perfectly fine. I
Mhm.
mean, but just be prepared for anything to happen, because if a woman is constantly, and this could go for a man too,
Mhm.
anybody, if a person is constantly dealing with a similar issue over and over again, and they're not, it's almost like you're not being paid attention to, or appreciated or understood, which
Mhm.
all of that does kind of fall into the whole communication spectrum anyway.
Yeah, and I think
You do
that's
have
that's
to have
part.
understanding.
Yeah, and I think that part that goes back into that, before the relationship began, did you sit down and talk about how you want to live? Because, yeah,
Yeah.
at the very least, I mean, you have a framework. Because some people, maybe, it's like they have, they're aspirational in how they want to live. It's like, yeah, I want to be like this, I want to be like that. So you like this? Hey, yeah, yeah, I think I'm like that. And you just sort of being aspirational together. You get together, and you fall back into your old routines. So, you do have to be careful in how you craft it, but it's like, at the very least, you have something to go back to. It's like, yeah, you remember when we sat down and we said blah blah blah, you said you were like this, I like this, so what's different, what can we work through, instead of
Right.
just, it's,
Or
yeah.
maybe have like a quarterly. I mean, I'm not saying you have to have quarterly really, but just periodic like reevaluation of
Mhm.
where you stand. Because like you said earlier in our conversation, you can change over time. So
Yeah. And you can, and situations change. And it's like, to me, it's like, we are at that point where, people are starting to look at, because marriage is a business. Because you do have financial ties, and you go to court if it doesn't work out. So
mhm.
it's like, to avoid, spending a whole bunch of money in legal fees and everything like that, it'd be better to, like, treat it like a business and be like, all right, what's the going in?
Right.
What's the financial forecast? What are you looking to, because I know I was in a relationship where I'm just aggressive about, entrepreneurship and business, and, trying to be successful in life and things like that. And I was dealing with a person who would like rather sit home and watch Bridezilla.
Oh, that used to be my show back in the day.
Yeah. And so, wouldn't understand like, yo, I'm leaving out to, go to the office, or I'm leaving out to go someplace where I can just sit down and just work and blah blah blah. And they were like, oh, why don't you just? It's Saturday. Why don't you stay home? Blah blah blah
You
blah. Blah.
definitely have to be equally yoked.
Yeah, I wouldn't say equally yoked. I would say you have to understand each other
Well,
because
I mean, yeah,
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
kind of mean in that way.
yeah.
Yeah.
And also it's like even with my parents, they're different in that way. My father's very leave the house, leave the house, leave the house. He's going to some committee. He testified on Capitol Hill. He's been to Africa, all these other kind of things. And then my mother is at the house. Now, as a couple, that's curious, but as a parenting unit, it worked out well. So, because
Mhm.
my mother was, it wasn't like we had babysitters or nannies or stuff like that. Oh, my mother was home. So, I mean, it can work out, but you have to make sure that, your communications on that you've communicated to the point that it
Yep.
makes sense. Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
guess that's a good point for us to end on is communication is key, baby.
Mm-hmm. Get
Make
those
sure you let your partner know in a clear, succinct way. Pay attention to them.
mm-hmm. Yep, get
Yeah.
your financial forecast, your SWOT analysis, your
Oh boy. This ain't no damn business podcast.
hey,
But
hey.
I understand it. I really
Mm-hmm,
do understand it because I always say I ain't dating nobody with no bad credit unless I know why the credit was bad and it
mm-hmm,
makes sense.
mm-hmm.
Some things can make sense. There's a way you can have bad credit, but it was for good reason. But if you just out there frivolously spending,
Yeah.
we ain't gonna work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right.
All
Well,
right.
hey, listen, this was another good topic again. We might have to, come back around with this one day in the
Mhm.
future, a part two version of it.
This is true. This is
But all
true.
right, thank y'all for tuning in with Uncle B and Fee. Remember, we are here every Tuesday live from 8 to 9 Eastern Standard Time. So
That's what
make
we
sure
do.
you just, check us out and subscribe so you'll know when we're on. All
There we are.
right. Y'all take care now. You hear?
Peace. Chicken grease. Later.
Toodaloo.